So it's just gonna be, except Isaac,
Yeah,
Isaac, of course. He may very well be himself to say like, I don't want to do it, but luckily he's very much willing to sacrifice himself.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's just spot on that. And I just think also that Abraham has had all these previous experiences where his faith was tried and tested, and he saw God working in it. So there's a reason for this, Lord. I may not understand it, but I'm trusting you because of the way you led me in the past.
yes. Yeah. And the same thing with like when you like getting to know a person, right? And you just know like your friend, for example, your husband, for example. Sometimes you're married for a long time, you kind of know what each other is speaking and how they would react.
Yes.
The same because
Right.
you trust that person, and when it comes to a spiritual relationship with God and our faith in God, we should already know what God would like us to do when we are in any situation, based on our experience that we've had with Him.
Because even in a normal situation, right? The more you're gonna spend time together with a person, the more you're gonna know that person. The same thing with God.
Yeah.
So how many years did Abraham walk? I'm gonna say walk with God because it's the same thing. He's walking with God. Based on all those experiences, he's talking to God, he's praying to God, he's reading, maybe learning more about God. So the more you learn, the more you're gonna talk, the more you're gonna read, the more you're gonna know who's that person is that you're serving. So that's what the experience of Abraham. So that first instance, that when God was talking to him about sacrificing his own son, whom he loved, Abraham pretty much knew 100%, maybe 200% that God is talking to him because he really knew and God is his friend. Okay? So no hesitation. No hesitation. As what Sister Grace was saying a while ago, all those may be possible blockage, I'm about to say, or distraction that can hinder him in obeying God. He disregarded those. He disregarded those. He didn't say anything. He kept it as a secret. So early in the morning, most likely Isaac was still sleeping. He woke him up. Okay, son, let's go. I want to go with me. We're gonna go to this mountain and we're gonna sacrifice something. We're gonna sacrifice. We will make a sacrifice for God. And Isaac, knowing his father well as well, right? Because if not, you will ask him, why do you need for sacrifice right now? It's too early, right? But he obeyed because he know, just like we were mentioning, Abraham know his father, which is God, and Isaac know his father well, being his human father, that his father trusted God. So Isaac, based on the experience that he was observing from his father Abraham, no hesitation in obeying his father Abraham as well. Right? So waking up early in the morning, two servants went with them, and they went to the mountain where God was telling them to do, because God said, I will show you which mountain you will do in your sacrifice. So how many days they traveled, right? 3 days. Right? So on the third day, they saw the mountain, and he told the two servants, stay here, and we will come back. See that faith, right? We will come back, and he said, I will come back. He said, we will come back. So there's already a faith in there. His faith is really strong. He trusted God so much that whatever God is asking him to do, though, as what we mentioned, Brother Wilo, he doesn't know what's the purpose of that, though what's the reason why he's doing that, and yet he followed God 100% and 200% if you're gonna say it that way.
Sorry to be
No, it's okay.
I don't know if how far we get into this, but just based on what you're saying here, how is it that sometimes we say, God has showed me this to do, and it didn't work that way? Is it that we were lying to ourselves, or what was it? Because if God, like the story you just tell, it happens.
Yeah.
God will find a way of escape, and we see that it happens. So how is it that sometimes, even as leaders in the church, and when we tend to take a selfish view, and we want to convince the church and the rest of the members, we say, well, this is what God has told me to do. This is what God has directed me to do. then it didn't work. What is it? Were we lying about God speaking to us, or were we being selfish? Because based on the story you just told, it happens. God promised a protection. God promised, that He will be there, and He was there.
Actually, it actually, to answer the question, I believe, Brother Desmond, that it's actually in our lesson. It actually tells us that this experience that Abraham had, right? God told him to sacrifice Isaac, regardless of really and truly. But we know that in Abraham, he knows that it's not going to end that way. Because even if it does, he has a faith that God would even resurrect Isaac. So it tells us here in our lesson, actually, that sometimes God may ask us to do something that He never intends for us to complete. And then the other one is, He may ask us to go somewhere He never intends for us to arrive there. It's not actually the end that is mentioned in here, but what we learn in the process. So with what you're saying, Brother Desmond, and really and truly sometimes we believe that God is talking to us and this is what He wants us to do. In a way, it's probably pointing to us, this is the end of this, but He never intended for you to reach that ending, but along the way, you will learn something along the way that potentially would be better than you being really accomplished in the beginning.
Very good, and I take that, but in the end, for some of us, in the end, for some of us, we cannot see the reason why God was we didn't learn anything. We didn't, like Abraham see, this is what God meant. So he could see the end result of why he was asked to go there for him to develop that trust or understand that God's word is not going to go back on His word.
So if you think about it, going back to Abraham, he already has that thing. Even if really truly God wants me to kill my son, he will resurrect him. Because He's not gonna fail in that promise He had sealed to me in the beginning that the seed, the Messiah will come from my son's seed. So He knows that regardless of what happens, that is going to how it ends there, He will resurrect. The resurrection prior to that.
And that brings my mind of thinking, just as what you said, what Abraham must have at least was familiar with the promise that has done for that.
Yes.
3:15. All concerning that prophecy. So maybe in some ways he wondered, I don't know. Again, I'm not going to mention I don't know, but at least we know that he was at least familiar with that prophecy.
Yes.
And actually to add to that too, in our lesson, it actually mentioned that it's almost like God is letting Abraham experience what God the Father was experiencing. He actually sacrificed His only son, of course, His only son that He loved also. So in a way, it's like sometimes you can more empathize more if you can experience it, right? I mean, in our lesson, all this word, I think, is all about, like, sometimes, I'll stop in a minute. I think I'm going far. But anyway, when we are experiencing all this suffering, all this process, so we know how to empathize sometimes with someone who's suffering the same thing.
I think that's that's almost the way of the last part of the lesson. The more you're gonna experience suffering, the more you can give, let's say, advice to those people or comfort to those people. For example, I lost my mom, and I can comfort Elder Des if he lost his mom, because I already experienced how it feels to lose someone I love. Okay, so let's go back to the story of Abraham. So it's really famous what Sister Grace was mentioning a while ago. Only Abraham who experienced what God the Father felt when He allowed His only son to die on the cross. It says in our lesson it's a revelation, a prophecy, and a typology. So can you imagine Abraham? I think Abraham was longing to see what does it look like to have that seed, right? But God showed him more than what he's asking for. Okay? I will show you, I will let you feel how my God, how my Father will feel if you will sacrifice your own son. Right? Can you imagine that? So Abraham was looking on that time, on that end, and he already saw it, basing on what he himself experienced, on what God had asked him to do by sacrificing his own son, whom he loved, Isaac, as a sacrifice for God. His faith is really founded on the rock, which is God. His faith is really firm because 3 days he can always back out while they're traveling. The same thing with Isaac. His trust on his father, basing on what he observed, on how his father Abraham had that great relationship with our Father up in heaven. He saw that, basing on that experience, basing on that what he observed, he can trust his father that whatever he's trying to do, he can trust on him. Right? So when he asked his dad, I have the wood, we have the fire, but where is the lamb? Where is the lamb? Or where is the sacrifice? And Abraham said, God will provide the sacrifice for him. That's very specific. God will provide the sacrifice for him. Right? So 3 days they traveled. Maybe his heart is aching and everything. Maybe the question is still there. I don't know if he's questioning or not. Or maybe since he's fully trusting God, maybe there's no question at all. We don't know. But basing on his faith, I don't think he's questioning God. Because foremost, on that first instance, if you want to question God, you want to question him right away. Imagine that still, 3 days of torture if you gotta think it that way. Maybe he's thinking, oh, I'm sacrificing my son, I'm sacrificing my son, I'm sacrificing my son. On the way to Mount Moriah, you're thinking in your heart, God is asking me to sacrifice my son. It pained him, but he needed to trust God. So we know the end of the story. When he's about to kill his son, the angel of God talked to him, Abraham, don't hurt the child. Now I know that you love me, and I know that you trust me, that you're very much willing to give up your son for me. And there's the ram caught in the thicket, and there's the sacrifice, which is a typology of the sacrifice that Jesus Christ is going to do for the rest of us. Go ahead, Adventist.
And you know, in there, you want to say, couldn't have God relieved him from that pain and suffering? but no. But no, because as Sister Grace rightly said in the first place, God wants us to understand how we feel.
Yes.
Because Jesus went through it himself. And Jesus said, Father,
take this
if it is
cup.
thy will, let this cup be passed.
Yes.
It was because Jesus was having a good time. he was really, he prayed and he prayed.
Yeah.
And it sweats up drops of sweat becomes drops
That's
of
of blood.
blood.
Yes.
That's not a little bit of pressure. That's not a little bit of pain.
That's already an extreme heat.
Yeah.
Okay.
So God wants us sometimes to get there, as the verse said, He wants us to get to that point so we can empathize with our brothers, with our sisters. And one section in the Bible, I don't know exactly what it's saying, that it talks about when one of our brothers falls into sin or into anything, we should treat them with love. Lest, the Bible says, lest you should fall. Lest you should fall. Because, and sometimes God allows us to fall to see how the brother must have felt when you were dealing with it in a hard way. Yeah.
Okay. So, Isaac, he didn't really want to call this. He wasn't discussed that much in our lesson. They just focus on Abraham. So we were not going to discuss Isaac that much as well. Because they're just talking about Abraham, but we're gonna give credit to Isaac as well, okay? So because the thing is, he really trusted his father when he told him not to sacrifice you to God. He didn't hesitate to, right? He didn't fight back or whatever. He didn't struggle. He just allowed his dad Sometimes I'm wondering why I need to tie him down. Right? If Isaac is really willing, I was thinking, did Abraham really tie him just to sacrifice? The son is willing to be sacrificed. Right? So those are just questions that sometimes that we don't tend to answer. But the willingness of Isaac to allow his dad to sacrifice him is a big faith on his part of his dad that he trusted him so much. So it's a challenge to all father, to all of us. Okay, being a good example to those children or to those people who are growing up in church, especially those newly baptized. They're looking at our example. They're looking on how our faith or our trust in God is. So that's what I'm trying to say right now. Isaac, I don't know how often they do worship in the house. I don't know how often they pray in the house. But based on the example of God that Abraham showed him, that's what happened. He trusted his father. But even his life is very much willing to give to God as well. Right?
And it spells out obedience.
Yes.
And they were both obedient, the father to God and the son to the father, in obedience. I remember growing up as a little boy, and when my father said, "Come boy, let's go," let's go, right? You don't ask. But here in America, in this culture, let's go. Where are we going? Where are we going? I don't want to go. Why should I go? When are we coming back? And it goes on, and you hear that if you don't answer those questions today to the child, it's a form of abuse.
Of course.
It's mental abuse and it's all kind of abuse. So I don't know if God would have made that call during this time.
What's going to happen?
Okay, so before we move to another lesson today, I'm just going to read this. It says here, give back to God your entrusted possession, and more will be entrusted to you. Give your possessions to yourself, and you will receive no reward in this life, and you lose the reward of the life to come. It says here, all the agony that Abraham endured during that dark and fruitful trial was for the purpose of deeply impressing upon his understanding the plan of redemption for fallen man. One more here. The agony which he endured during the dark days of that fruitful trial was permitted that he might understand from his own experience, that's what we'll be talking about a while ago, something of the greatness of the sacrifice made by the infinite God for man's redemption. In the last part it says in here, the key to Abraham surviving and learning to the whole process was knowing God's voice. Okay? So as what we were talking a while ago, I know my dad's voice, I know my mom's voice, I know my wife's voice. How would I know that? Basing on my relationship with them, basing on how often I communicate with them, basing on how often I talk to them, how open I am when it comes to my relationship with them. Even if my wife is already far away, I can always recognize her back, even without her talking. How much more you can recognize the voice of that one calling you. Right? Remember Samuel's experience, he didn't know the voice of God before, but Eli told him when he said, Samuel, Samuel, right? Tell him, here I am God, I'm listening to you. Right? So it's based on the relationship and how you're gonna know the voice of God.
And even if your wife or your mother want to impersonate a little bit, want to hear a little bit,
correct.
You say to them, talk a little longer. And, you know, and you will find out. So even sometimes when, as you talk about the relationship, if we carry a little longer with our Lord, we will know. Even if it sounds like God, but it doesn't sound like Him. And you will ask God, speak a little longer, Lord, and or whoever. And you will find out because you have that relationship.
Okay. So we have more stories to go over. Right? More extreme heat. Wayward Israel. This is about the story of Hosea and Gomer. So a question would be asked again, being a man or being a boy, whatever you say that, if God will ask you to go and find a wife, a prostitute, right? Gomer is a prostitute, right? I got it right. So if God will ask me, Henry, I want you to go to this place and get Gomer or get Melinda as your wife. Are you kidding me? Melinda is a prostitute. Why would you let me do that? Right? Those are the questions sometimes that, but Hosea, just like Abraham, he didn't question God about it. He followed God, right? He obeyed God. So that's the word again, obedience. That's the word again, he know the voice of God. Though he didn't mention that he know the voice of God, but still, he followed God. Whatever Abraham experienced, Hosea experienced as well, in a different form, if you want to look that way. So he married, he got Gomer as a wife. Gomer is unfaithful, right? So he left Hosea, went and looked for another man, and he says in order, so he got kids from other men as well, right? But God told him, Hosea, go back and take her back. In our situation right now, no, Lord, I'm not going to take her back. I'm going to file a divorce. I obeyed your voice on the first time, not this time. Right? Not this time. Not this time. But Hosea followed God. Okay? It says in our lesson, it's just showing how the Israelites, how like they prostitutionize themselves, or what do you call this, right? They look for another God and everything. He's trying to give Hosea an example on how the people of God is trying to look for another God or another idol aside from God. But God is still doing all that He can for those people to come back to Him, right? Because of His love. So, because if you're going to read Hosea 2, 1 to 12, you will see what God did during those times. He let them suffer this and that, this and that. I'm going to expose you just like a baby when you were born naked and everything. And God is trying to put a hedge too. Though He's giving them His time, those people, the Israelites, to suffer things that God is allowing them to suffer just for them to realize how helpless they are, that they needed God, still God is with them, showing His love. And yet they keep going back to the idols that they want to serve. But God is always there, trying to reach them out. Hosea, there's also prophet living during those times of Israel when they were trying to look for another God. They are always there, as what they said, there's always a remnant, there's always someone who will guide the people going back to me. So that's what He's trying to do during this time. Hosea obeyed God's voice. He followed whatever God is telling him to do, just to show the people of Israelites how they're doing during those times. Okay? And then here comes Gomer. If I realize I'm experiencing all these things, I think I need to go back to my husband. With my husband, I is compared to what I am right now. So that's how God is. Sometimes we experience suffering, sometimes we experience the struggles in our lives, but still, I'm so much thankful that despite all those sufferings that we had, I believe that God is always with them and is always with us as well.
Yes.
That's why during the introduction of our lesson, Crucible with Christ, that's why the first lesson that we discussed about the shepherd, just to point us right away that God will always be with us. So that's why I said, okay, so this is the introduction, and now we're looking at all the examples that's trying to prove, trying to impress in our hearts that whatever situation that we have gone through in the past, that we're going through right now, and we're going to go through in the future, we'll be rest assured that God will always be with us. He will never leave us or forsake us forever.
Yeah, and God is not in the business of bringing us to a point to make us fail.
Correct, yeah.
And so sometimes we say, oh boy, God, I hope God doesn't ask me to do that. God is not going to ask me to do what He asks His men to do because He knows people I am.
That's true.
And He said He won't give us more than we can bear. So He knows our heart, He knows our strength, He knows the level of faith in which we have reached. And God is going to say, well, this man don't have this level of faith, so let's not take it there. So He's not in the business to take us to say, got you.
Yeah,
No. So,
and aside from that, just to what you said a while ago, He will not allow us to experience suffering which we cannot bear.
yes.
And He give us the thing we can get. He'll be with us to get us through.
That's it.
Right? So that alone is a big promise. And we're gonna say that's the great promise already. That if I cannot handle this, God will help me to get out from this trouble.
Of course.
If you have that faith. Okay? So that's the Isaiah and Gomer. Now we're gonna go to surviving through worship. This is a good discussion as well when it comes to the story of Job. We have a quarterly lesson before about just the story of Job alone. 3 quarters, on 1 quarter, 3 months. We've been discussing about the story of Job. Now we just want to give us a little history on this story because we're talking about the crucible in Christ. Alright? So if you're gonna go back to the story of Job, here comes the gonna say angels, whatever, different representatives. We're gonna turn it that way, right? Representatives of different worlds, and Satan showed up in heaven as well. They have I don't want to say maybe a grand meeting of all the inhabitants of the world, or different worlds. We're gonna turn it that way, and God is the presiding leader and everything, right? So when God asked the devil, where have you come from? Oh, from the earth, right? Walking to and fro, so and so. Just saying, okay, I'm the God of this world, right? That's what he was trying to say. I'm the master of this earth. Okay, this is my territory. I am the representative of the earth, which is not supposed to be. Because originally it's God, but since man fell from sin, now it's fixed. That's what he was trying to claim. And God said, can you consider me servant Job? Right? Okay. Well, he's saying because you're putting nothing on him. Why don't you take all the blessings that you have provided for him, and you will see what's going to happen. Most likely. No, actually, he said, I assure you, he will curse you to your face. So what happened, right? Everything that Job possessed was taken away from him, including his children. So that's the first meaning. That's the first trial that Job said. But Job said, make it a king, make it a return. Right? So that's why it says in surviving through worship. Instead of questioning God, why he allowed these things happen to him, his response is very different. Because his relationship is so deep that instead of cursing God to his face, or instead of blaming God on what had happened to him, it turned back into worship. Right? Make it a king, make it a return. God giveth, God take it away. Blessed be the name of God.
And you know, it wasn't just the issue of the census. He struggled a bit, and he did question God at some point.
Towards the end. That's why when God was talking to him, who are you to question me this and this?
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just trying to.
Okay. All right then. So that's the first instance, right? So then the next one, it says, why don't we do flesh for flesh, bone for bone? And God said, go ahead, because they have another meeting, right? We don't know how many days or how many months after the situation. After, I don't know if it's just one day that all the properties was taken away from him. I don't know if it's a week, he didn't mention anything. But the story, if you can look it that way, one after another, the servant come to him, right? Only one servant survived. In all situation, it's only one servant who survived. Everything was taken away. So just like the fire, right? All the rest of the servants were burned as well, and only servant went. And when the Sabaeans came, took all the camels or whatever is that, only servant was left behind. Even with the children, they were drinking and eating and everything, right? Only one servant survives, just to give that report to Job. Can you imagine if you're in that situation, one after another, they're giving you that report? So maybe you will be overwhelmed, right? But this response is very different to worship God. So that's why surviving through worship. So here comes another meeting, the one up again, 11, if you're going to turn it that way, based on, So the person came again, Satan came again, on that instance, and God asked him again one more time, where have you come from? From the earth, walking to and fro, and we considered by Job. Okay? Then Satan said, flesh for flesh, and bone for bone, something like that. And God said, go ahead, but make sure not to take his life. So that's what he suffered again. We lose some sore and everything from head to toes and everything. Can you imagine you have those ungodly voice or source or whatever you call that. And here comes Job's wife telling him, curse God and die. Right? So we don't know what happened to his wife after that. Maybe it's just a normal situation for a woman or for whoever is. If I'm seeing my wife suffering that much, I don't know what I'm gonna tell her. Right? Am I going to tell her, are you still being faithful to God? Is that the God that you're serving? Why don't you just curse him and die? So that's what Job's wife said. Okay, let's see.
And I think it's like all of this, the children every day, just part of that. And now, of course, now she's the only one now that's not really experiencing anything.
So, yeah.
So it's really, and I think that Job is experiencing all this calamity, and now his health is even affected, right? So here's the wife who's actually watching him.
Yeah.
Like it's almost like I have to say that she's probably more suffering more than Job, because she's watching all of these things also. So it's like we probably like to the point of depression. That's why she probably flirted it out and said, "Curse your God and die." Yes, exactly.
And she's moving more.
Yes. Yeah.
All the trials and everything, chapter.
Yeah.
Something like that one day.
Yeah. One day, 10 of them.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I believe so because you remember with David, that was how David felt when
Lost that one son.
what am I saying the right thing? With Absalom,
Which one?
Absalom.
When Absalom together trying to
When
make
it's time
a.
to kill him.
Yeah, and so when David saw what was happening around him, son pushing sword into another son, and he believed that all these things were happening as a result of his
behavior.
And so he was feeling it more hurtful than even the son killing the son.
Yeah.
Because he knew that all these punishment, they were coming back to him as a punishment. So it's a similar thing here, that the wife must have felt a little more hurt. But the wife must have felt a little more hurt. But the lesson that we should take away from this event is that we should between us and the Lord. Because the Bible says that when you marry, you must stay away from your family, because our mother and father is closest to us, and we are instructed to stay away and cleave to your wife.
Yeah.
So, when a wife, is that close and telling you that, it tells that not even a wife, a mother, or father, Paul said, let nothing shall height or depth or what have you, let nothing come separate you from your Lord.
He just wants all those comments. And what the word that Job didn't curse his wife, right? Yeah. What a foolish talk are you talking about? Yeah. Foolish woman. Foolish woman. So you need to realize that I don't know if they didn't mention the name of Job's wife anyways. Right? I don't know if Job or the wife heard what Job was saying on the prior incident that he said, right? Naked I came, naked I returned. God giveth, God taketh. Maybe he emphasized that again to his wife when she was saying that, curse God and die. No, I won't curse God. That's what I told you a while ago. That's what I'm saying a while ago. I need to praise God. I need to thank Him. God giveth, God taketh away. Naked I came, naked you came, naked you're gonna return to God. Let's worship God and wait for His promise that He will deliver us. Okay? So if you got on those experiences of Job, he got 3 friends, right? If you're gonna consider 4 friends, if you're gonna consider it that way, they want to, instead of consoling him, they're trying to blame him for everything that would happen to him. But we will not discuss that further because we already discussed that during the whole quarter of the story of Job. We're just focusing right now that Job survived those trials one more time because he knew God in his heart. So Abraham, Hosea, Job know who they believe, right? They know who they serve. They know who they trusted their lives. They know who's giving them all the blessings, and they know that those situations that they're going to experience or they experience during their lifetime, they know that there's a purpose, it's for their own good. and they trusted God that they would get through those. Well,
Just everything that he went through, there are two things that he said. The first one, we're all familiar with Job 13:50. Though he slain me yet was.
yes, yes,
Did he know what
usually,
his,
yeah.
but he know what the way that I take,
Okay.
but he had tried me completely.
Correct. Yeah. I think you mentioned that in our previous lesson. I think
Yes.
yeah, in our previous lesson, because that's how we reacted to worship God and still praise God. That He will come out as gold at the end after the suffering and suffer. So maybe that's going to be our experience. That every time we have those suffering that we're going to encounter, we must thank you Lord for all the suffering. That know that there's a purpose, and at the end of this, I will become just like gold. I can see your image in my image, in myself.
And when sometimes you know the story of Job, you know the response